Welcome to the Edinburgh Fringe. Let's take 3 shows into the shower today, shall we? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This is Edinburgh Calling, the largest arts festival in the world. Let's try and get as many of those 3,500 shows into your ears. 3 of them. I can get 3 of them into your ears in the next half hour. That's it. Ewan Spence here is always behind the microphone. Thanks very much for joining me once again. And like, love, share and subscribe. The usual social media prayer from content creators the world over. Yes, 3 shows going to be discussed today, and they all come from one name, and that is Niall Moorjani. Niall has brought 3 shows to this year's Edinburgh Fringe. It's a busy August. The first, Kanpur 1857, returns for a final run following its successful 2025 engagement at the Fringe. Then it was supported by the Pleasance's Charlie Harthill Fund to promote new theatre. This year, a bit less so. The second is Mohan, a Partition Story, a look at the Partition of India through the personal story of Moorjani's grandfather. Finally, Selkie, Past, Present, Future, is a look at what it means to be human through storytelling, live music and Orcadian folk song. We talk about the impact of the Charlie Harthill Fund, both in supporting Kanpur 1857 in 2025 and the difference in not having it in 2026. How do you deal with less support and resources with the same show? Following that, we talk about the story of their grandfather during the Partition of India and the importance of oral history. And after that, a little discussion about the wider financial challenges facing Fringe performers this year, in previous years, and going forwards. Many shows at the Fringe. We wonder how you get to 3,500, and then you find, to use the Scottish term, the idiots who are doing 3. One of them joins me now, Niall Moorjani. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ewan. Thank you for having me.
3 shows. Are you mad?
I'm not angry about it. I'm just tired. Tired is the word I would use. I'm very tired. And very tired. And I think it's one of those things that I did 2 shows for the run last year. So it's the same amount of total shows, which is 37. I did that last year. And I thought to myself, well, I didn't die. And ultimately, I'm here to work hard. So, and then you plan these things in January, and that's just about enough time to have passed since you last did it when you promised never to do it again to yourself. However, it's far enough in the future that you're going to have to do it that you're not really thinking about yourself then, so you sign up to it. Whereas I think if I had to make the decision October immediately after, I'd have never done 3 shows. And if I had to make the decision in June, I'd have never done 3 shows. But here we are, and I'm doing 3 shows.
We're at the start of week 3. You've only got 2 shows left, so you said you're only doing a total of 37. Yes. So you've done a mix. You're doing a mix of shows over August.
Yeah.
Tell us about them.
So there's 3 times 2. The first was Kanpur 1857, which is a show that had a lovely time last year. It got lots of nice reviews, won a Fringe first. You know, the stuff that Fringe dreams are really made of. We sold out most of our run. It was tremendous. So we wanted to bring that back, but sadly for anyone listening, it has finished its run and in theory has done its last show ever. It's a sort of, it's a never again, maybe. Kind of thing.
What's it like performing a show knowing it's the last show?
It was very surreal. Like, I've done last shows before and then have brought them back. Mohan is one of those, which I'll talk about in a second. But it's sort of like, I don't think you process it properly, especially during something as intense as a Fringe festival where you are focusing on what's next every single day. You're not really, it's immensely present. So you're not really thinking, this is the last time I'll do this. Like, it crosses your mind and then you do the show, then the show's over, you have a quick drink, then you have to go somewhere else. I think when the Fringe ends, I'll be like, we're finished. That was a beautiful ride. We did 53 shows in total. It was a beautiful ride. We did some amazing theatres. I think it will sink in after that. The show in lots of ways has really changed my life and my career. So I think I'll take a moment to process it then. But at the time, it was like, there's an emotional weight to it, but it was just another show at the end of the day, like kind of thing. Yeah.
That show itself, it has a little star underneath it, supported by the Charlie Harthill Fund.
Yeah.
Those who know the Fringe quite in depth will know that that's the sort of startup VC angel fund from the Pleasance organisation. Tell me a little bit about that.
So it was brilliant. Basically, they give you, it's not a cash prize, but they give you £10,000 worth of funding towards your show. They give you production help. They really are there as mentors. They give you space. They help you navigate how the Fringe is going to work. So I was lucky. I'd done the Fringe many times before, but I'd never done it with Pleasance, and I'd never done it with funding. And it's absolutely game-changing. It allowed us to, our only prop for this show was a massive cannon, and we were able to pay for the massive cannon because of the fund. And otherwise it was a lovely job that the producer had done on a budget of 200 quid, and it looked pretty good, but it wasn't as powerful and strong as it needed to be, and suddenly we were able to have that. So it was incredibly helpful. And yeah, it's game changing. It meant that we could take risks, and the risks led to artistic success. The artistic success led to a Fringe first. The Fringe first sold out the rest of the run. So basically, Charlie Harthill completely changed the game for us in the show. It meant we could do the Fringe. I don't think we would have done the Fringe with that show if not, because I was paying a producer, 2 actors, the dream, myself, and then there were lots of other people attached to it. I don't think I would have had the funding to be able to pay everyone. And rightly, the people I was working with were brilliant and would have taken jobs elsewhere because they need to pay their rent. So we wouldn't have done it without Charlie Harthill, I don't think.
What was the thing that they revealed to you that you'd never considered?
I think the scale of the intensity of the press. So part of it was also Chloe Nelkin, the PR company, came on board as as in kind as your PR, and it was incredible. I didn't know that was a world you could break into so not easily, but with the right levers kind of thing. If you have people who can pull the right levers for you, suddenly Clive Anderson, off Whose Line Is It Anyway and Loose Ends, was in the show, and then had us on Loose Ends, kind of thing. So suddenly there were just these things that were way more connected. I saw behind a curtain that I hadn't seen behind, and they were very good at holding my hand through that, because as much as it's exciting and wonderful, it's also a bit overwhelming at times when you haven't been through it before. So they were, just excellent at showing you how the world of the Fringe works on a slightly larger scale. Because I'd done a lot of shows that I'm still immensely fond of and proud of, but on a smaller scale, kind of thing.
But now you're back at the Fringe and you don't have that intrinsic support. Does that make it more difficult?
Yes, categorically yes. So I mean, I don't have any funding this year. I'm self-producing all 3 of my shows. So with Kanpur with Charlie Harthill, they help you during that Fringe, and they were very lovely, and they had us down in London, and then the show is passed back to you, and it's your show to do with what you want, which is wonderful in lots of ways, but it means you do lose that support. So I wanted to bring it back, and I wanted to bring 2 other shows, and that meant that I would be self-producing them. I'm also working in association on 2 of them with Jasmine Cole Productions. Basically, I had some budget, or I made some budget, so I could ask Jasmine, who is incredible, this wonderful producer, to help with jobs that I'm rubbish at, basically. So that's been really great. She's been amazing. But if anything needs to happen, I'm the one that needs to make it happen. Whereas with Charlie Harthill, you'd have other people. So I've noticed there's less press. There's far less press. Big papers are far less likely to come and see you. You don't have that same level of support in terms of marketing, helping you design your flyers. All of these things suddenly bounces back to you. But what I have enjoyed is Kanpur had a lovely run last year and got loads of reviews, so I wasn't worrying about reviews for Kanpur. One of the other shows I've brought back, Mohan, did a run years ago, has 5 stars in The Scotsman. As much time, we're getting some lovely reviews, and I'm very grateful. Again, it doesn't need it. And Selkie, which is brand new, we've been very lucky. The reviews have come in, but me and Ailsa, the person who works on the show with it, we really trusted the show, and we're hoping it would be well received, and we're very lucky that it has been. But I haven't been worrying about press or the intensity of that world in the same way that I did last year. So in some ways, not having the support means that you have less, but that is less to worry about, if that makes sense.
There's always talk at the Fringe of it being too expensive and prices are going up there. And you've talked a lot there about resources that you had last year that made a difference and you've not had this year. Is that part of why the Fringe appears to be getting more expensive?
I think, ultimately, funding is non-existent for the festival. It's Charlie Harthill, you're so lucky. I never expected to get it. Last year and the year before, Keep It Fringe, which your listeners might be familiar with, which was this fund that the Fringe Society set up where you could get $2,500 towards your show. Last year, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it was like well over £100,000, and this year it was cut to something like 10. It received like a 94% cut, like it was bonkers, and I was lucky to receive that. And Keep It Fringe for a small scale show, £2,500 goes quite a long way. It can pay for all of your marketing, it could pay for your accommodation. Accommodation costs are absurd in this city during, well, real life and Fringe. And I say that as a local, somebody who lives here and pays rent here. And so, yeah, like these funds are going and they're so competitive because people can't afford to do it without them. And if you don't have the funding and you don't have family wealth, basically, or a massive production company that's picked you up and you're very lucky, it's brutal to do it. And part of the only reason I can is because I live here. Like, I don't sound like it, but I'm from Dundee. Moved to Edinburgh University in 2012 and lived here and worked the Fringe as a flyer when I was 19 years old and stuff like that. So I can afford to do it because I don't have to pay accommodation costs. And I put the people I'm working with up in my flat, much to my partner's dismay. Bless her. She loves the people that come to stay. She just hates having her flat taken over for a month. But she understands it's what pays the bills. And if I didn't have that, I'd find it very, very difficult, I think. I certainly couldn't have done the Fringe paying for accommodation. And it means that, things like PR, which make a massive difference for getting press in, which make a massive difference for press sales, something I couldn't get this year. I couldn't afford PR, and I've noticed less press, like kind of thing. So massive knock-on effect without funding. And I think the festival is just exponentially going up in terms of cost constantly, and ticket sales are dropping. So it's a double whammy for artists where not only are our costs going up, our capacity to recoup those costs is dropping, which I don't blame people for. Ultimately, life is way more expensive, like at the moment. And if you have finite resources, a ticket to a punt of a show you've never heard of is maybe not the thing you're going to spend it on, even though you should. You obviously should. We'll both know that some of the joys of the festival are going to see something you don't know what you're getting and then seeing the best show you've ever seen and sometimes the worst show you've ever seen, but you've got a story out of it. But yeah, no, the festival is exponentially getting more expensive, and lack of bodies to help out is a massive problem.
Is it putting you on the spot as a single cog in this machine to ask what should be done for next year?
I mean, they're never going to do it. I think, the Council, the Fringe Society, these big four venues need to come together and have a serious conversation about how do we make the festival more affordable for artists. There's a lot of talks about affordable accommodation. It's not affordable. Most of the people who are coming up are still paying rent back home, and then the rent is double what the rent is normally in Edinburgh. Like, student halls is costing £900. It doesn't cost that year round. So it's not affordable. Having conversations about that, having conversations about how do we, especially for artists who are already marginalised, working class artists, BPOC artists, queer artists, how do we make sure that they are getting, Keep It Fringe is well funded. So if you are an artist from a marginalised background, there is access support you can have, like kind of thing. How do they make sure, as these big, again, they need to work, the University of Edinburgh is massively a part of this. How do they work together to make sure that artists can afford to be here and put work on and take artistic risks? And so it's not just very, very wealthy artists. And how do we make sure that we include locals better? And I do think, as a local, I do think that at times we are sort of cutting off our nose to spite our face with the level of hostility we bring to this festival sometimes. It's a beautiful place. I've just moved to Easter Road, and I'm not a Hibs fan, but I'm going to be a Hibs fan, or else I'm going to resent the 20,000 people that turn up on my doorstep every week. I want Hibs to do well, and I chose to move there. We choose to live in Edinburgh. It's a beautiful festival, and I really do think, and it's incredible, as somebody, my access to the arts as a teenager living in Dundee, sure, there's the Rep, which is very good, but to see alternative theatre was the Fringe, to see stand-up, to see clowns, to see character comedy. I was only getting that in the Fringe. It changed my life as a child, and it's the reason I'm in the arts now, so I'm very fond and protective of it. But I think so much more needs to be done to make it affordable, and ultimately, if there's a way of, saying to tourists who buy a ticket, you don't have to pay your tourist tax if you buy a Fringe ticket or something like that. Are there ways of bringing people who aren't necessarily here for the festival into the festival more, and definitely continuing to reach out to locals, doing more deals for locals? People talk about expanding it across the city. I actually think the opposite. I think we should keep it as contained as possible so that locals know where they can be and not be, if that makes sense. Like I say, I live on Easter Road. I don't want the Fringe on Easter Road. I don't want to be flyed on Easter Road. It's miles out of Fringe Central, like kind of thing. I don't mind being flyed at Bristow Square, but when I get home to my house or if I'm in Leith, I totally understand why some people are like, that's a bridge too far for me. No shade to any venues on Easter Road or on down in Leith. It's just, I think those things can help And I think ultimately being a bit more selective with who gets to come up. And that's not to say it shouldn't be democratic in a sort of free-for-all, but, I mean, no ill will to them, but there are a lot of very wealthy schools that bring huge groups of kids up who understandably are very cute and attract audiences because people want to go and support the group of wealthy teenagers, but they don't need to be here. And they are driving up prices for the rest of us. They're taking accommodation. They are taking space physically in the festival where somebody else could have been, where local Scottish artists could be, who are much neglected at this festival.
I shall push back on behalf of the Fringe Society on just one of those
Oh,
points.
sure, please do.
Which is the Fringe has always been, if there's a stage and if you turn up, you can play.
Yeah, I hear that. But
And they're coming for you now.
yeah, the sirens play. I hear that, but I don't know if that's true. I think ultimately there's such a large financial barrier and there's a lot of things behind the curtain that if you can't see, you can't just turn up and play. You do need to register. And the registration comes with a fee. And there are those who are wealthier than others. I'm very middle class and very privileged in many ways, but I still struggle to afford it. And I don't know, there is a selective process, and that selective process is often very financial. So I don't know if it's as simple. I'll push back on your pushback, but in the friendliest of ways. And I just think more needs to be done. I think let them come if there is more for others, if that makes sense.
There are a lot of conversations like that on the Fringe, and they will happen in September and October. But right now, the actual business.
Yes.
You've still got some shows on.
Oh,
Yay!
still got 14 left.
And I love the topics in both of them. Can we start with Mohan, given that it's already been mentioned?
Yes.
Mohan, A Partition Story. And I'm interested in this because I recently heard a couple of podcasts that went into a lot of depth about the politics of the partition in India and Pakistan. So I think the first one is, again, horribly coarse, but could you just tell our listeners what the partition was?
Absolutely. So at a core of the show is a retelling of my grandpa's story. He was an 11-year-old refugee during the partitioning of India. He saw it with his own eyes. He had to move. His family lost their homes. And partition, in a nutshell, was simply when the British were leaving India, they had ruled it for a few hundred years. When they were leaving, as they left, they decided that the best thing to do to stop religious tensions growing, ironically, was divide India into two new countries, actually many more, but at a basic level into India and Pakistan. And Pakistan was not an old idea. It was not an ancient concept. It was not this ancient land. It was a brand new idea that was come up with, that Muslim scholars came up with at Oxbridge, of all places. And they said, let's have a land just for Muslims, which at the time, I can see where it came from. But the British eventually, in a nutshell, were like, oh, that sounds grand. Off we go. And
We'll just draw this line.
Yep, and they drew this line with a man called Cyril Radcliffe, who had no geographical experience, had never been east of Paris. He was chosen by Lord Mountbatten because he'd be impartial, or was seen to be impartial. And they did a terrible job of it, and immense violence erupted. People were devastated. They were told that homes that had been theirs for generations were no longer theirs. Places like Sindh, where my family are from, was fairly culturally diverse and fairly culturally peaceful. So my grandpa, we would talk about how Muslims would celebrate Diwali with his family. They would celebrate Eid with their Muslim friends. He was raised a Sikh in a Hindu family, was a really common thing. And then suddenly, all of those things went out the window. Everybody was enemies along religious lines. Again, to keep it simple but not light, 12 million people lost their homes, 3 million people died. And it was, until very recently, the largest mass migration in human history. So it didn't go well. The British had looked at Ireland and gone, well, that went fine. Let's do it on a much bigger scale, and what could possibly go wrong? Lots was the answer, and that's the partitioning of India. And to this day, if you ever see in the news that there are tensions between India and Pakistan, they were at war very recently, which the great peacemaker Donald Trump ended very kindly for everyone. It's because of this moment in British history.
And like
And
all
Indian
history in British history, a lot of it is just not taught.
No, absolutely not. No.
No. Everything after 45 is fine and wonderful. But you get that opportunity to tell that story now on a very personal scale with your grandfather.
So he, like I say, was an 11-year-old boy, refugee through it. And the show oscillates between me, as you can hear me now, telling the story of the partitioning of India from a sort of like zoomed out, big scale, historical, political effect, which generally when partition is talked about, that's how it's talked about. The politics is looked at, the geography, the geopolitics, all of those things. What's often lost is the humanity. But as a kid, I grew up with this story because it was my grandpa's story. And in many ways, it's our origin story. It's part of why he moved to the UK. He was a refugee in his own country. He wasn't from Delhi, where they ended up in. He never settled in Delhi. and he wanted to go somewhere else, basically. So this story was fundamental to my childhood. And so I oscillate between giving sort of context in, I hope, a very artistically playful way. There's poetry, there's spoken word, there's like comedy, but then very sincere moments of sitting and embodying. I wouldn't say I'm acting, because that would be disingenuous to actors, and when I do try and act properly. But I'm embodying my grandpa and passing the story on as closely as I can to how he told it to me. And I want to give audiences a sense of who my grandpa was and how he was as a person and the story that he gave to me and why it's precious to me. And it gives you a much more personal, zoomed-in effect on the great story of partition. And I think in lots of ways it makes it so much more easy to process, because otherwise it's just facts and figures. And it's easy to get lost in them. But when you see the immediacy of a human that is connected very directly to me and sadly is no longer with us, I think, well, I know it's very powerful, and we've had a lovely time connecting with audiences. We did it for a few years back, 21, 22, 23, put it down for 3 years, and we're back because it's the 80th anniversary of Partition next year. And also refugee narratives, sadly, are more needed now than ever. And trying to be a part of changing the way in which we talk about refugees in this country feels fundamentally important. And as somebody whose family come from a refugee background, feels like a job I have to do, that kind of thing.
I have a question about the story that you're telling, because you say it's your grandfather's story.
Yes.
Is it the story your grandfather told you, or is it your grandfather's story that you found during research? Because those, not fundamentally, but those will be two separate viewpoints, presumably, on the same facts.
Absolutely. So it's closer to the story my grandfather told me. But, of course, there are moments where I have to make it work for stage. I do not remember exactly what the words he said to me every time. I have audio recordings, I have notes from interviews with him, but, you know, there are things that I might have misrecorded. The thing about any historical research, and don't let any historian tell you otherwise for oral histories, but also for any written histories, is there is always a degree of error that comes with it. However, everything that my grandpa described in his stories happened in Partition, and I know that from wider research. And I've had many of the accounts verified by other family members, so it wasn't just him. So it's me, and again, it's an embodiment of him. So it's me trying to pass on my impression of him to an audience. So he would probably sit and watch it and go, I'm not like that. Or maybe he would. My dad thinks I've done a pretty good job. And to be fair, he's a sweet but smug man, so he'd have loved that I was doing him, like, kind of thing. But it's closer to, I've really tried exceptionally hard not to fabricate. I haven't put things in because they're satisfying or because they're artistically neat. I worked really hard not to do that. But there will be moments, ultimately. There'll be moments that he's misremembered. That's how oral history works. But there is nothing in there that isn't verified by wider research. I have a master's in public history, and most of my thesis was spent looking at the Partition of India.
Was there anything that you discovered in your research that was, let's use the word awkward, about the story? Because we are talking about your family here.
Yeah.
But you are telling a wider story.
Yes. No, I'm very lucky. Apart from, I say that, my Dadima's family don't talk about partition. And I learned that during my research that this is quite heavy but for any listeners, but often families would murder their own women and children to keep them safe from what might happen if they couldn't protect them while violence was raging, because awful things were done. And my Dadima's family discussed doing that to their women and children. And fortunately, a powerful auntie said, no, we're not doing that. And I'm here. And she lived to tell the tale, and the women in her family did. But they don't talk about partition. And they won't talk about it. Nobody in her family talks about it. And we'll never know what happened. We'll never know exactly what went on. We know little snippets and fragments of things here and there. For instance, we know what I just told you, but we don't know wider things.
And this is why history through storytelling is just as important as history in preserving newspapers and artifacts and parliamentary records.
Absolutely. It's an oral history being passed down from generation to generation. But that was learning about it and then speaking to my dad, and my dad being like, Dadima, you know, your Dadima's family discussed doing that too. It was pretty painful, like, kind of thing. And then being like, oh God, and she doesn't talk about it. Of course she doesn't talk about it.
So have they seen the play?
No, bless her. She's very old, and like leaving the house is very difficult. So I made the play after he passed away, partly in his memory. And then she's leaving the house isn't the easiest thing for her, bless her. But she knows it exists. She once asked me if I was still a jester, so I don't think she really knows what I do. But she seems to, look, I can pay the bill. She's happy. She's a classic Indian Dadima.
The phrase "you're happy you can pay the bills" is a wonderful parenting guardian. So, have you done well? Can they pay the bills?
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Yeah.
Are they doing what they like? Yes.
Yeah.
Do they love it? Yeah.
See, those things, doing what they like, irrelevant. Do I love what I'm doing? Irrelevant. Can I pay the bills? Crucial. And fair enough.
So you do have show number 3,
Yes.
which is Selkie.
Yes.
And this is a little bit more Scottish than Indian.
Yes, very much so. So Selkie is an exploration of transness. It's called Selkie Past, Present and Future, and it follows 3 different sort of reimagined Selkie stories, which are all looking at transness in Scotland, loosely in different spaces and places. Selkie Present and Selkie Future are very much me and sort of also fictiony. Selkie Past is more imagining the ways in which we used to treat trans people, and whilst the language may not have been perfect, there was a different way of sort of approaching it, and it's looking, it's speaking very much to the idea that transphobia is, if anything, the political narrative is being led by Scotland. A lot of the things we're seeing there
On both sides, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something as a non-binary person that affects my life every day. Like the bathroom ban directly affects me. And whilst the bathroom ban, it's briefly mentioned in the show, isn't the point of the show. I wanted to make something to explore it. Ailsa, who's the musician, is involved and tells a story in there as well, is queer. We're very passionate about trying to get the actual perspectives of trans people across, and it's not polemic, it's beautifully lyrical, and it's really true as well in lots of ways to the formula of a Selkie story as well. And Ailsa is family on her dad's side of Orcadian. It's why I wanted to work with her. She's an amazingly talented artist, but I was very aware that these folk tales are mostly from Orkney and the Orkneys and Shetland, and I didn't want to just there's so many examples of people who come into storytelling in traditional spaces and they just take for what serves them, but I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be as respectful as I could, whilst also seeing a Selkie is understandably as a mixed-race non-binary person, something you can take its skin off and walk as one thing, put it back on and swim as another, speaks very deeply to me. But I didn't want to be disingenuous to the traditions from which Selkies come. And we think we've hit the middle mark in that very nicely. And what's come of it is quite a playful, lyrical, silly show, which has moments of sincere poetry and beauty, and it's very set in nature. Nature plays a huge role in the show. And we think it's beautiful and it's doing all right. Audience has been very nice about it. We've had some nice reviews. So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I'd say.
Now, you said earlier you weren't an actor.
Yes.
And all of these pieces
Well, that's a lie. I am an actor. I just don't always act, if that makes sense. I do more storytelling. I do act. I act professionally whenever people pay me for it. And in Kanpur, I was acting professionally. But storytelling's the main thing I'm doing this Fringe.
Because it does have this mix of the shows of music, of lyrics, of poetry at some points as well.
Yes, yeah.
Why approach things that way? What attracts you to that? Not a grab bag, but that sort of multidiscipline hour.
Oh, I think it's the undiagnosed ADHD that riddles my brain. No, it's I've always been interested in art that is multidisciplinary, in art that is exploring different. I've always believed that the thing you're trying to make, the story you're trying to tell, the message you're trying to get across is unique to itself and therefore always requires different tools to express it. So the idea that I would come at a new show with the exact same formula that I came at the last one is absurd to me. So Selkie is the most traditional style storytelling I've done in years. My background is storytelling. I came through into the arts as a storyteller and then stumbled into acting by accident. And it's the most storytelling because it wanted to be. It was something that was rooted in tradition, rooted in traditional tales. Yes, I've made these things very contemporary and to speak to a contemporary time, but it wanted to be a storytelling show very deeply. Kanpur wanted to be a show that was smashing oral storytelling and traditional style storytelling up against Western style theatre. There was a very deliberate choice there to take two different knowledge systems and way of expressing history and information and butt them up against each other and see what happens. Mohan, again, whilst it is a storytelling show, has moments of theatricality when I embody my grandfather. And of course, there's, even Selkie, there's some nice lighting changes. There are little moments of character work. And I think everything, whatever you're making, requires slightly different things to make it sing, and one thing will dominate. So Selkie is predominantly a storytelling show. Mohan is predominantly a storytelling show. Kanpur was predominantly a play that had storytelling in it. But I was acting as a storyteller. So that character told stories differently how I do. And it just, for me, unlocks very new ways, or what feel like new ways of approaching a conversation, that kind of thing. I hope that makes sense.
Do you choose the tool, or does the story tell you what tool to use?
Sometimes I know, and sometimes I find out as I go. So with Kanpur, It was a very organic process. I thought it was going to be a storytelling show with moments of theatre. And as myself and the co-director, Jonathan Oldfield, started to make it, we realised it was a play with some storytelling in it. In the show, I'm telling a story as a British rebel who's strapped to a cannon of how it's not in any way like this, but it's like, you're wondering how I got here. And then he interrupts and starts asking questions. And initially, those moments were meant to be so quick and very flash in the pan. And then he was going to provide musical accompaniment throughout the storytelling. And very quickly, his character became so big and so interesting and so crucial to the story and the point that I was trying to get across as I was writing that I knew it was a play and that had some storytelling in it.
How does it feel as a storyteller when that unlocks itself in front of you?
Oh, it's the best feeling in the world. It's lovely. And what it does is I think it makes me feel very present and that I am responding to the thing in front of me as opposed to trying to impose my will on it. Sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to be like, no, I need this to Selkie past, the past story in Selkie past, present and future. I had Selkie present and Selkie future, and I knew I needed a third story to make the show work, and I knew the beats and the things I needed that story to do, but it took me ages to actually work it out. But I was almost writing to a brief that I'd given myself as opposed to just organically being like, what is this going to be? I had to hammer that one in a little bit. But the show itself, as me and Ailsa formed it, because there was a point we were thinking about having puppetry in it, and puppeteering a sort of Selkie puppet. And very quickly, after we did a couple of rehearsals, we were like, oh, we don't think we need this. We think let's let the words speak for themselves. Let's trust ourselves as a musician and a storyteller to build this world in a blank space and trust in that. And for this, it works.
So, Kanpur, we know, is, for the moment, resting.
Yeah, heavily resting. It's dormant.
Heavily resting.
It's dormant. It's like a dormant volcano.
What happens with Mohan and Selkie?
So Mohan is on until the end of the Fringe. We're even doing the last Monday. We are here to the bitter end for Mohan. I've got bills to pay. And then we're hoping Mohan's going to go on a big tour next year as part of the 80th anniversary of Partition. If there are any bookers listening, please feel free to get in touch. And then Selkie, we're hoping the same. We don't really know exactly what's going to happen for Selkie, but we would like it to tour. We'd definitely like to do an Islands tour. And we hope to keep performing it as here, there and everywhere. I imagine it will get some Pride bookings with the nature of the show, but we'll find out as we go, I think.
Would you want to play Mohan in India or Pakistan?
I would adore to do either of those things. Dreamworld, I'd like to play it in both, but there's interesting politics behind that. But I would love to take Mohan to India. It's fascinating. If Indians were not directly affected by partition, frequently they are not interested in it, which I find very, very, very interesting. It was this vast thing, but India's a country of 1.4 billion people. So even though it affected 12 million and more, many people weren't affected by it, and they're not that interested in it. It is taught, but it's taught as a byproduct of independence, not as a thing of itself. So when I have told the story there, I found people that are very moved by it who didn't know it, and people who do know the story who go, we never talk about this here. There's only one partition museum, and it opened very recently up in Punjab, in Amritsar. So I would love to be part of continuing to keep that story alive in India as well as the UK.
We talk about how the Fringe brings stories together and brings artists together, but we rarely talk about how the Fringe can kickstart those stories around the rest of the world. So fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed for me. Thank you.
Let's make sure we get everything in. When and where are they on?
So Mohan is on at Pleasance Courtyard in Pleasance Above every day until the end of the festival, which is the 31st at 3:25. And then Selkie, Past, Present and Future, is at the Scottish Storytelling Centre at 6:40 every day until Sunday the 30th.
We will have links straight into the box office, as always, edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com, and presumably there are websites and everything where
Absolutely.
they have an extra life.
Where they have an extra life? Oh, I see. Yes, I have a website, Niall Moorjani, storyteller.com. I do not update it well enough. If you do want to keep up to date with what I'm doing, you're best following me on Instagram and Facebook at Niall Moorjani. That's where I'm good at posting.
And we'll have links to those as well. Niall, thanks so much for your
Thank
time.
you so much for having me. Pleasure.
Niall Moorjani, with the show still running at the Fringe. Mohan, a Partition Story, plays at 3:25 Pleasance Courtyard, and Selkie, Past, Present, Future is playing at 6:40 at the Scottish Storytelling Centre on the Royal Mile. As for Kanpur 1857, well, technically it's over. That's it. It's done. But as Niall said there, never say never. So you can find out more at Niall's website. Again, linked in the show notes, as always, at edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com, with links straight into the Ed Fringe ticket office for the shows. It is still week 3. I did joke yesterday how many Glastonburys were left, but when we get to Thursday, that's essentially almost a Glastonbury still to go, because you still have Monday at the Fringe as well. So you've got the Friday, the Saturday, the Sunday, and the Monday. But to get there, we've got to have Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday as well. So 3 full days in 3 full days, and then Monday. So there's still more than a week of the arts to enjoy here in Edinburgh. And of course, if you're not in Edinburgh, have a look around, find your local theatres, your stand-up clubs, your music performances. Art is out there. Go find it. I know how to find it. I go into town and I bring you back some more tomorrow. It's easier for me, but it's possible for everyone. Ta-ra for now. You've been listening to the Edinburgh Fringe Show, hosted by Ewan Spence, produced by Spence Media for the Podcast Corner. Listen to more from The Fringe at edinburghfringe.thepodcastcorner.com.